Holla ballers! What's going on? It's Preacher. So we've got a few things to talk about. This is like the best way I can think of doing it. So we'll do it this way, which is kind of me muttering on for a little while. So let's get the good stuff out of the way. First, I want to do my sellout stuff. We got the Drama t-shirts on sale. Woo! Finally, it's got all the quotes from Drama Time Season 2. So Welcome and, you know, Drama Llama, Ghosted, everything. There's about 300 or 400 comments on there. Made by our designer, Sakurik, who's going to be doing all sorts of cool stuff for us. So if you wanted a Drama t-shirt, there you go. It's got the cool logo on the back, done by Spreadshirt, so you can get the link down below. They're not a money-making thing. We're just what I do because they're cool, advertising and all that kind of stuff. So with that out the way, also I'm going to Berlin. So if you are Team Germany, I'm going to be in Berlin with Ghosty. Ghosty is going as well. We fly out tomorrow, I think. Yeah, tomorrow or early Saturday morning, something like that. We'll be there on Saturday anyway. So I'll be in Berlin on Saturday for a fan meet. And I'll tweet out where we're going to be. But I'm going to make an effort to be in central Berlin-ish, wherever it's going to be, Saturday afternoon, so we can come down and meet you guys. It's the whole reason we do these kind of trips. We're going to meet 20 or 30 people that are all staying together, who are part of the Start community, who have like formed from the creation of Preach Gaming. They're all going there. So we're going to fly over and be there as well with them and go for a big meal and stuff. And you guys are more than welcome to sort of club in, come say hi, stick around, hang around. We'll all be in a big mob, no doubt. And generally do all that cool stuff. So if you are Team Germany, watch Twitter. Yeah, watch Twitter. That's where I'll be tweeting where I am, and I can put pictures and shit up and all that kind of stuff, yeah? So I'll be doing it that way. So let's move on to some of the other stuff. And I don't intend to annoy anybody with this stuff, but I think it's time we had a rational conversation. It's a really weird climate right now with Blizzard stuff, specifically World of Warcraft stuff. And I generally feel like the community's not doing itself any favors, and it's kind of getting on my nerves just how much people really want to hate Blizzard right now and looking for really any excuse, and particularly taking it out of context and that being encouraged around the internet to actually take things out of context and blow up about it and go from 0 to 11 in terms of the outrage meter very, very quickly. And I know some people are going to listen to this and like, fuck you, and this is kind of the problem. Every time we have this discussion, I talked a little bit about the private server stuff on the web show, but I had the benefit of looking back over that because I have the comments and the Twitch chat in the video. So I downloaded it and edited it together to one video and then checked it out and was reading through it. It was just, it doesn't matter how sensible a discussion we have from equal sides trying to take a non-stance. I didn't even take a stance in it. I was just like raising questions to see what you guys could come up with yourselves. And for the most part, that was a really good idea, I think. That was the best way I could think of as approaching subjects like this, is let me just present questions, and you guys might come up with the answers yourselves, and mostly that happened. But on top of that, there's a huge, huge, huge vocal amount of people who are just screaming and shouting from the rooftops. And I tweeted about it. It's one of the most retweeted things I've ever done. It's like I was really sick of the attitude that people are putting forward, which is just to find something to cling on to. Like flying was an example in the past expansion of the flying thing, and hold onto it tight just so they have something to be outraged by. And it really feels that way. And I'll talk about it a little bit now. So firstly, the big dramas that have gone on. And I keep getting asked by this stuff, but I think this is the turning point for me where unless I feel something strongly about it, I'm probably not going to talk about it because I feel like I'm adding fuel to a fire that doesn't need any fuel adding to it. And frankly, it's usually something that's not a big deal in the first place, or ultimately turns out not to be that big of a deal, despite how vocal the community is about it. So let's talk about, first of all, a couple of weeks ago, Celestlon tweeted something that angered me. And he said that streamers are causing problems with Legion Alpha feedback because they're organizing campaigns and stuff against Blizzard, despite not being in context, right? This is a big deal. They're not putting things into context or giving any real substance to the message they're sending. So I don't know who was doing this. I know it didn't come from me. And I think Celestlon really meant to say influencers, but as he's not a PR guy, he used the word streamers. But generally that means influencers. That means people like myself, YouTubers, streamers, anybody who has a lot of eyes on them to do with World of Warcraft, they call an influencer. And they send us things like alphas because, why? It's great publicity. We can stick it in front of, like, I can stick something in front of 250,000 people. Noble could do something similar with even more people. Streamers have thousands and thousands of people watching live and dropping in and dropping out all the time. Basically, you hit millions of eyeballs really, really quickly. With just like, you can do that with like 10 alpha keys. And of course, it's not like they're prioritized. I mean, we are given some sort of priority to try and hit those eyeballs, But I can tell you there's hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people on the Legion Alpha. They're certainly not all streamers. In fact, very, very few of them are. Although that's not the impression the community gets. Again, it's context. It's like, no, they hit very few influencers because they hit a lot of people, and then the rest can go wherever it'll be. Well, Celestion said that streamers were causing problems with alpha feedback, and it made me really angry. Why? Because Blizzard is historically, and history has to set some precedent here, done very, very well with using influencers. They did really well with it in Warlords of Draenor, including myself. Warlords of Draenor, the stuff we saw in the alpha and the beta was fantastic for the most part, but we didn't know how because we never really got to try it, how that was going to play out long term, which turned out to be bad. Not really our fault. The stuff we were presented was really cool. It was a really well-packaged gift that we were sent. Overwatch is not even out yet, but so massively popular because of streamers and YouTubers. And the same with Diablo 3 was the same. And the same with Heroes of the Storm to a lesser extent. But certainly Hearthstone, right? Hearthstone was in beta for how long? And everybody was fucking all over it when all the streamers and stuff, and we had access and all that kind of stuff. So historically, they've done really well from it. I found it generally offensive that influencers were being landed with the blame. Although I took it, when you say things like streamers and influencers, I took it personally. I was like, do you think I'm doing this stuff? And it was fortunate enough Celeste actually tweeted back to me like the next day saying, I fucking love your videos, which kind of said to me, we don't mean you in this. Which was really nice that the lead game designer was like, I like your content. I was really proud of that, despite being slightly drunk at the time, as it was pre-WrestleMania. But still, it was a great moment. And I was like, well, obviously there are definitely people who take advantage of anger and rage because it gets a lot of eyeballs. If I make a video where I rant, I know it's going to get a lot of views and put money in my pocket, right? That's true. And it's very, very easy to make that content. Super easy. But often the times I don't see it that way, and therefore I don't make that video. If I feel passionately about something, certainly I'll make a video about it. That's what my job is and why I love doing my job. But if something doesn't seem like that big of a deal, although it's kicking up a massive fuss, seemingly, then I generally don't really talk about it, or I'll think about it. I'll leave it a few days and see what happens when the smoke clears. But there are definitely going to be people who look at something and just say, right, there's an opportunity now to make some fucking money, and I could start a war. So I wasn't involved in it, so I didn't check it out. You guys know I generally don't watch a lot of WoW content outside of what I create. I created my content because I saw a gap, and that's what I like to do. And that was pretty much the WoW content I make. Everything I want to know about WoW is something I go out and find out myself. So I'm not sure who these guys were. Not that it matters. It doesn't matter. Can we foresee that people would do that to gain a lot of views and put money in their back pocket? Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people, the problem I have with the influencer list, we're on a list, is there are people on there who really dislike World of Warcraft and haven't played it for a really long time in a lot of cases. There are people who hate it, seemingly, but still play it. But there are lots and lots of people on there who are sort of legacy influencers of World of Warcraft or Blizzard games in general who really hate World of Warcraft, and they give them access to it, and they're not going to enjoy it in the first place, so you go in with this weird attitude, and all their fans are like, oh god, it's well shit because my streamer said so. And that's a little bit of a difficult thing to manage, right? It's really difficult to manage that. Anyway, so what happened is he got a huge backlash from this, yeah? So Celestion tweeted this thing out. It was a silly thing to say because he's not a PR guy. He shouldn't be doing things like that. And got this huge backlash because, of course, everybody who read that message instantly thought of their favorite influencer, whoever that might be. They thought of them and were like, fuck you, my guy would never do that. My guy would never do that. And it doesn't matter who it is, right? We don't need to mention names, but when someone says your favorite streamer or your favorite YouTuber, you have people in your head because those are the guys you watch. And it got a lot of backlash because it got very personal for those guys who support those guys, even monetarily in many cases. They pay for these guys to do their job, and it seems like Blizzard is giving them shit. Which I thought was a reasonably fair response to that message, despite the fact that definitely there are people taking advantage of the system, but there always has been. That's not new. What then seemed to really let the community down was that just a week or so ago, or less than, the community proved itself that it didn't need the influence of streamers or influencers in order to be complete and utter arseholes, and have created a situation where I personally feel, for the first time ever, if Legion does turn out to have problems, and it very well might do, it's nowhere near complete yet, we're still only level 108, the community is going to have to take some responsibility this time, where previously I would fight tooth and nail to say, no, the community is not at fault here, but now we might be in a scenario where, yeah, the community might be having a problem, or that Blizzard might make decisions based on just people being shitty. So what happened? There was raid testing schedule. I'm a veteran of raid testing with World of Warcraft. Ever since the Burning Crusade, I've done beta raid testing and alpha raid testing. And sometimes it doesn't work. It's a buggy server. You're there not only just to test the encounter, but also test the server and test how the mechanics work of getting a raid in there. That's all really complicated stuff. I don't know anything about it, but I know it's fucking really hard to do. And sometimes it doesn't work. This is all part of the testing process. If they can't get stuff to work, that's a load of stuff they have to fix. It's from their end, that's kind of successful. They need to figure out this stuff before it hits live. So this is very normal. Really normal. And for the EU in particular, it's a bit of a nightmare because raid testing takes place at ridiculous hours in the morning. You'll get schedules like 11 p.m., then 1 p.m., and then 3 p.m. to test 3 bosses in a night or something like that. And you have to kind of sit there, especially when you're cutting edge guilds, and wait for that to happen, play other games with people on TeamSpeak and vent and whatever until you can finally do some raid testing. And then sometimes you'll get to 3 o'clock in the morning and Blizzard says, yeah, it's not working, sorry. And that's the end of the message. That's all they have to say. And it's your responsibility as a player to go, okay, I mean, it's a test realm. This is kind of something that you should expect might happen on occasion. So it happened. The raid wasn't working. It was getting DC'd and people getting DC'd. But this time, for the first time ever, the response to that was straight away to jump into a thread, and people are saying it escalated. It went way further than that. Went pretty much instantly into spamming memes and ASCII art, but then took it to racist jokes, and then took it to homophobic stuff, and then even on some occasions actually went to find the Blizzard staff's Facebook pages and start putting stuff there. Oh dear. And this went on for quite a lot of pages instead of doing anything, but it went further than that. So Blizzard, let me just put something into context for you. Blizzard's response to this was to not only remove access for those people who went too far on the forums to the Legion Alpha completely. They just revoked their accounts for doing that. But they also took away that Overwatch access if they had it, which I assume a lot of them did. They just were like, yeah, you're not testing anything more. Now, before you lose your mind on that, also bear in mind that one of the biggest issues they had here absolutely proved what Celestalon was saying about how hard it is to get good feedback these days. Anybody who actually got to test the boss and provided feedback on the boss, right? This is why they were there, was downvoted into oblivion on the forums. People actually trying to discourage that kind of conversation because it interfered with their roller coaster of spamming basically the unmoderated Twitch chats that you've probably all seen. And therefore, they were literally going out of their way to try and get rid of useful information and upvoting anything that was related to racism and, you know, homophobic stuff and all that, all the usual shit that you see. A lot of it's been deleted, and I just checked, and the actual thread itself has been deleted. That was still accessible, although it had been edited. Now they've just got rid of it completely. I'm sure you can find it somewhere. And the response from the community was, oh, Blizzard's being very childish. I saw a guy defending it endlessly saying, it's a really childish response from Blizzard. Childish? This is the situation we're in now, where spamming that kind of stuff, spamming big giant pictures, and all this kind of stuff in a feedback thread, and then actively downvoting the good feedback and trying to get rid of it in some manner, and not that Blizzard didn't see it anyway, but getting rid of it in some way, or trying to discourage actually giving feedback to people, the response is childish, but that's okay. But that should be okay. It should just be a forum ban. Absolutely not. You're there to test things, and it's just the community keeps letting itself down in these scenarios, and it's really quite sad. Then we had, of course, even more drama with the private servers. I discussed several reasons why private servers are a pretty bad idea, but ultimately I didn't really have to do that. As it turns out, the actual support for such a thing is not that great. And it just was a case of a very vocal few people being extremely outraged over something they didn't really care about, which is exactly what's happening right now, is clinging to things that they don't really care about, or maybe don't even know enough about, and then getting completely over the top outraged about it. So what's my context for saying that before you say, there was loads of support, and I know that will be in the video, and I'm not sorry, but just hear me out on this. So obviously the server was shut down, blah, blah, blah. And it seemed, I mean, let's put some context to this. YouTube videos alone account for more than 2 million views of people talking about this and support or whatever, right? That's just YouTube. I haven't even put one out because I was like, you know what? This is a fucking dodgy situation, and I'm not convinced. And I kept thinking that, and I said this to Ghosty, I said, I'm not convinced this is actually a big deal. This feels like flying. It feels like it, so I'm just going to hold back. We had to talk about the web show because it was just constant requests to talk about it all the time. We talked a little bit about it, but again, I just posed questions on the web show, essentially. So it had like 2 million views just on YouTube alone, let alone the huge amount of articles, including the BBC getting a hold of this story. And chances are that if you played World of Warcraft or had any gaming in you left that you could possibly commit to like an MMO, chances are you heard about this, and then they took it to a petition. Now, the sad thing is, this happened quite a while ago now, that this story broke, to call it that. The story broke and had all this attention thrown at it. And even the server itself was boasting 150k active accounts. That's accounts that were logged in the last 10 days. Now, what does that actually mean? It's a very nice number, kind of, for a private server. It's a pretty cool number. What does it actually mean, though, in a world where accounts are free? And then it ultimately turns out that the petition, despite all this media coverage, despite all the outrage, despite all that, only now has 90,000 votes. And that includes the amount of really arrogant people openly almost boasting about posting many votes themselves. And some guy saying, I've been doing it all day. Now, I seem to think that the mentality here is that supports it because the number's bigger, although it obviously very much diminishes the worth of such a petition. This was the time where people who were genuinely interested in this and maybe could have provided a sound possibility for this to exist could have shown that in force. Instead, what we got, and if you really read into it, before you get too angry at me here, if you look at and I've done some heavy research on this, if you look at the AMA from the guys who ran Nost, and you look at all the feedback that people have given, the feedback is we had a really good time there. Did they say anything about enjoying the content itself? Very, I'm talking like 1 in 1,000 posts, right? And MMO Champion's up to like 600-700 pages now with this thing, if not higher. But you'll notice it's the same sort of 50 people going backwards and forwards, arguing all kinds of nonsense and not really getting anywhere. It's a very extremely vocal, extremely passionate, which I think is fine. As I said in the web show, I have no issue with private servers. I really don't. Blizzard doesn't want to provide this, and now they kind of have a reason not to. 90k petitions of potentially paying customers, but not really, doesn't justify permanently dividing your community into sections. It doesn't. It really doesn't. That's not enough people, not even close to enough people to justify that kind of thing. It's not. When you put it in real terms, and if you look at the AMA, they said where it cost them like $500 to $1,000 to run that server, but they had a team of 30 people, right? Sometimes they didn't make the cost to run the server. This is all their words. I'm not taking anything out of context here. Sometimes, most of the time, they got people who would pay directly to the host in order to pay for it. They never accepted any money. It was totally non-profit, which is admirable. They could have easily made some money, I'm sure. But on some months, they weren't even making that $500 to $1,000. That's not enough for one person to live off. And that's pretty scary, that sometimes they weren't making that. Sometimes they weren't making that in a month, and that's not enough for one person, let alone a team of 30 that they needed to run a private server. It's pretty scary when you start adding up the numbers of a potential team. Can you divide up servers into just vanilla? No. I even saw arguments like, oh, they'd have to put a disclaimer on saying that there'll be no content added to this. And there's a huge irony there that Blizzard has said, no, we're not going to do private servers, yet everyone's raging. But at the same time, they're arguing, just implement it, but put a disclaimer. It's like, well, we've already gave a kind of disclaimer to you guys. And has that made you guys quiet on the matter? Has that stopped the outrage? Of course not. No, it hasn't. And the ultimate truth of it, despite this huge amounts of media attention, is the numbers just weren't there. And if they wanted to show us, I mean, you're talking, if you want to create a vanilla server, which would have to be permanent, or even, and you can't really just have a vanilla server. I see a lot of people saying, no, vanilla was the best, it should just be a vanilla server. That's totally subjective. There are plenty of people, if you browse any forum for a little medium amount of time, you'll see people love vanilla, people love TBC, people love Wrath, and some people like Kata, and some people like Mott. There's a Mott private server, for Christ's sake. Some people liked those expansions, and you're in no place to say they're not worthy. And therefore, Blizzard would probably have to, if they're going to do it, create one of each server, right? And then permanently divide those communities up. Wherever your friends go is likely where you want to go. And that then insinuates that, I have no doubt, people would come up with nicknames for the parts of communities. We already have Wrath babies. What are they going to come up for the Burning Crusade? And there would be a real segregation in the community. That's just a reality. That would absolutely happen. And will it have the legs to stay forever? Or would it? How much would it reduce the people who might potentially buy the next expansion if they're more than happy to stay in vanilla? It's basically asking Blizzard to sever off their limbs, and in the time where people could have shown a real support, it didn't happen. It didn't happen, despite how vocal and passionate those guys was, and I empathize with them all the way, that they really love it, and those guys truly believe that a vanilla private server would be the best thing ever for WoW, for them personally, but the numbers just don't seem to reflect that without the damage it would obviously do in other areas of the game. And that's the way it's kind of come about. One thing that we did get from it, though, which I think is a message Blizzard should take away, is that the big feedback was the community was really good, and people recaptured what happened before LFG and LFR and LFD, and that is you had an identity. And that's something they could certainly take away from that. It's something we've been arguing about now for probably the last 2 expansions, is that right now in WoW, and have been for a long time, you are faceless. You are a faceless class. You are rogue. You are warrior. You're not preach. You are just warrior, tank, healer, whatever. And that's the identity you are assigned, because you don't see those people ever again, more than likely. There are far too many players to realistically bump into those people unless it's on happenstance. Usually you never see them ever again. And even if you did, you're probably not going to remember them, because how often do you really read everyone's name anymore? Whereas vanilla, obviously you did that. I think that's something to take away. I think the big message was we would really like some of the features of vanilla back. But in terms of supporting the gameplay and the raids and the PvP and all that kind of stuff, not much support there whatsoever. It's literally like 1 in 1,000 posts said, I quite enjoyed UBRS and stuff, right? But most of the people were like, I loved the community. I loved the fact that I got to know people because I was forced to be around them all the time. And I think that's very interesting. So the final thing I think we need to cover here, so I can wrap up this sort of tirade of things that needs to be aired, is that that's died down now. The private server thing has died down now. And the next thing the community is latched onto, and this is what I'm saying, is this constant rolling process of grabbing onto something with both hands and being completely outraged by it and not really understanding it and not really reading into the context, is, of course, the Garrison mission table and its appearance in Legion. Again, I haven't done a video on it because I read the Blizzard post, which seems to have gone amiss, which is Blizzard doesn't even know how it's going to work yet. That's the end of the discussion right there. They've no idea. They've no idea. They're not sure. Their words are, we've got bits and pieces of ideas. We're not sure how it works together yet. We're really not sure. We kind of think maybe it'll go this way, maybe it'll go that way. But ultimately, even Blizzard doesn't know how it's going to work. So word of advice to Blizzard, don't put anything out that you're not sure how it's going to work in the long run. They have a blog post coming apparently about how they're going to do it, but they're not sure yet. So ultimately, we have a system that not even Blizzard knows how's it going to work from their own mouth, and yet the community is up in arms about this. So let's talk about that, shall we? Let's talk about that the mission table is apparently the worst thing in Worlds of Draenor. I'm not sure about that. Out of all the things in the Garrison that I disliked, the mission table was 2 clicks of a button for me. And most sensible people had an add-on installed for it, and it was 2 clicks of a button and you were done. Is this a return to Garrisons? Not in the least. This entire system is very different. Basically, what you've got in Legion so far, from what we can tell, is you have the UI. And that's about it. And that's pretty much all we have right now. The system has been iterated on and built on so much that basically the UI looks similar, but the whole process is completely different. And therefore, getting angry about it just seems absurd to me, because they don't even know what they're going to do with it. So you're only getting 6 followers. To kind of know that. They confirm that it's about 6 followers. They'll go out on missions with you. The mission timers are like up to a day, which is fantastic. One of the big complaints people had is that I have to always be in my garrison because missions are constantly cycling through. So they've done the fix for that, which is like put into like a day. So you don't have to do that. You can do your click and off you go. And it should lead you to interesting quests. The guys will come back and they'll give you an interesting quest. And the idea is that these guys will come out with you and you'll have the team with you instead of them just being randomly walked by every now and again in your garrison. And it should be far more involved, and it should be a really satisfying single-player experience that leads you on your way to your 3rd relic slot in your artifact weapon. That's the idea. There are plenty of people who only want to play single-player in World of Warcraft. It makes sense that they have some content there. But ultimately, this is all we're talking about in relation to Worlds of Draenor, is the interface. The entire system elsewhere is completely different. The biggest problems I had with Garrisons are the things that most people had a problem with, right? It was herb gardens, it was mines, it was work orders, it was completing supply runs in order to get lumber mills and stuff working. All this Farmville content that kept dragging you back to the garrison all the time, none of that exists in Legion so far. I'm not saying this system's going to be perfect, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying it's too early to even make a decision on that, and certainly too early to start raging about it. Especially when that doesn't seem to fit the message that we had in Worlds of Draenor. Earning hundreds of thousands of gold via your garrison mission system, which was 2 button clicks, didn't seem to be a big problem for most people. Gearing up was a problem. Fine, I'll accept that. Do we know how it's really going to work in the end yet in Legion? No, it could turn out to be terrible, and I'll be right along with you guys if it is, and I'll prepare a video once we have the full support of Blizz on what it's going to be like, how it's going to work, then I'll prepare something for you. But again, this is something people have grabbed onto and like, oh, Garrison Mission Tail is back in force. Is it? It's extremely different. It's way, way different, and it leads to all kinds of different things so far, and it's nowhere near finished yet. Why are you outraged exactly? Are you just seeing a picture of a Garrison mission table and assuming that you're going to get the exact same Garrison experience in Legion? Is that what you're expecting? Because did you look at any videos of the class halls? They're nothing like it. Most of the class halls are very, very cool. They have mini games and stuff in them. They don't have things that are laborious tasks yet. They might do, but it's very unlikely. Blizzard heard the message about naval shipyards and the garrisons and stuff. And it's something that's now kicking off, and again, I'm being spammed with, can you comment on this? And there's my comment on it. We don't know yet. We have no idea. Blizzard doesn't know yet. So, chill the fuck out. And I know this message will fall on deaf ears because most of the vocal people probably aren't even watching this by this point. And it makes me a little on the sad side, honestly, to keep seeing these constant outrages all the time. And each time they're just not correct. They're not outraged about the right thing. Just outraged in general. Which is a bit of a bummer. The last thing I want to say is there's been a lack of videos this week because you know I've been making the Legacy video. I've been putting hours. It's 10 p.m. now. I'm whipped, honestly. I'm really, really fucking tired. I'm done. I'm not going to finish it till Monday. I found myself sitting down again at 7 p.m. just as I put my kids to bed, as I've done for the last 4 nights, in order to work till like 2, 3 o'clock and then go back to bed again and then wake up 3 hours later. And ultimately, it's taken its toll on me. I'm just fucking exhausted. I'm really wiped out. And so I'm not going to finish it till Monday. I know it was supposed to be out. I set myself a deadline again, which I shouldn't have done. Which I always make the mistake of saying, you know what? Looking at things, it's going to be done by Wednesday. Look, it's not. It's not. I wish it was, but it's not. I'm going to take a day tomorrow to be with my kids because I haven't really seen them this week because I've been working on the Legacy. I've had like an hour with my sons and then topping in and out and doing stuff, and it's just been shitty. And as I'm in Berlin this weekend, I'm not going to get to see them at the weekend either. So I'm going to spend tomorrow with my kids and my wife, and then I'm going to go away. I'm going to meet a load of people, have a great time, have a couple of fucking Oktoberfestian beers, and then I'll be back on Sunday evening. There will be a drama tomorrow, I think. I'm pretty sure there's a drama tomorrow. And then we'll get it done. So I think that's everything I need to cover about all the crazy drama that's going on. I think that's it. All right. So you be good. But just, if you see people getting crazy and outraged, I almost want to tell you, just don't engage, because they're outraged for the sake of being outraged right now. Or they've been fed misinformation. But the problem is, when you try and give them that good information, that I've seen firsthand, and it'll no doubt be in the comments of this video as well, is that they're just not going to change their mind on it. They're going to be angry regardless of what you say, because that they believe, in most parts, they absolutely believe what they're saying is correct. But at the same time, not really accepting any other information which might say, why don't you just chill out for 5 fucking minutes, yeah? Why don't you just take a step back, have a breathe, have a read. And I'm sure there are people going to say about the private servicing, I didn't even know there was a petition. That kind of proves my point. If you didn't even know there was a petition, despite the fact that it was on the front list of pretty much every topic about this thing, every piece of media about this subject had a link to it and mentioned it in some way, that kind of proves that you either didn't care enough to even be interested, or you went straight to the outrage instead of actually reading something about it and trying to find out some information about it, right? I mean, that kind of proves the point. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm just saying that if you don't know that these things exist, the likelihood is you just didn't give a shit enough and you wanted to talk about something else. And that's the be all end all. Anyway, have fun. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.